My name is Benjamin Skolnik, and I'm a historical archaeologist in the anthropology department. I have my team with me who set me up to take care of this piece. And they'll be joining me at the end. And we also have some guests that I'll acknowledge when we get to the end of the presentation as well. So let me start this presentation about historic maps and documentary research on Maryland's Eastern Shore with a look at one of these historic maps that we used as part of the project. This is just a small portion from William H. Stillworth's 1858 map of Talbot County. And here I take us to this portion because the small rectangle at the end of this long driveway represents Y House, the ancestral home of the Lloyd family of Maryland since 1658. Our group represents a team of archaeologists from Archaeology in Annapolis who, for more than a decade, have turned away from Annapolis proper and looked at the plantation landscapes that ring the Chesapeake Bay. One of the sites we've been drawn to is this site, Y House. And perhaps its most notable resident, Frederick Douglass, tells us of Y House through each of his autobiographies as he recounts his childhood that he spent here. This wood-frame, 7-part Palladian plantation manor was built sometime between 1781 and 1784 by this man here, Edward Lloyd IV. And by built, I mean he had somebody do it for him. But this portrait is by a renowned artist, Charles Wilson Peale, and you see Edward Lloyd here along with his wife, Elizabeth Taylor Lloyd, and eldest daughter, Anne Lloyd, aged 1. His ancestor, Edward Lloyd I, settled on this land sometime around 1658, and the 11th generation of the family still lives on the property today. And I pause here on this portrait because we know a great deal about Edward Lloyd IV, his family, his ancestors, and his descendants. The Maryland Historical Society has 77 boxes of archived material from the family. These include account books, plats, deeds, property lists, and letters and correspondences. The State Archives and the Talbot County Free Library also have collections related to the Lloyds of Y. For our work with historic maps and the census, we can say that the Lloyds were the wealthiest and largest landowners in the county. But the question we wanted to ask was, what about everybody else? What about the people who didn't leave 77 boxes of archived material to sit around in a state repository? What about the small farmers and their families? What about the enslaved? What kind of historical footprints did they leave? And as historians and archaeologists, we're very well aware that the answer to that question is little. And it's difficult to find where these people are in the past. But emboldened by new research tools like Historical Geographic Information Systems, or HGIS, we were able to create new historical and spatial information about the past. This spatial analysis software enables us to create new linkages between 150-year-old data sets. So the first step in this process is to digitize everything. So in this case, this means in a GIS program, digitally tracing over every feature found on the map, including the roads, railroads, coastlines, property boundaries, structures, springs, marshes, whatever's on the map, we digitized it. It also means transcribing the census, which is typing out every single line, all of the records, from these faded and ancient cursive pages. So here on the 1860 census, we see Edward Lloyd listed in Talbot County. And this is Edward Lloyd VI, the grandson of the man you just saw in the portrait. So as we can see, he's a 60-year-old farmer, a white man with almost $500,000 in real estate, mainly land and houses, and nearly as much in personal estate, which was mainly enslaved human bodies. So if you notice, none of that information is on this map. On the census, there's also several people listed as living in the same household as Edward Lloyd, but they're not on this map. It's through the name that are both on the map and in the census, the shared connection, that we're able to embed this additional historic information into these contemporary maps. So using the magic of computers, there you have it. All of the census information is now attached to this digital shape or point in our map. So accomplishing this join or linkage across the entire county for our data set results in a map that can look something like this, where each red dot represents one free person we've been able to locate on the map. And we've been able to attach names of people to points in time and space. So what I've just shown you is an exercise in historical GIS, database management, and just a little bit of creative thinking. But just a technical exercise isn't the reason we undertook this project. So I emphasize that this previous map shows the free persons in Talbot County in 1860 because slavery was legal, agricultural production depended on the slave labor, and there was not one, but actually 2 US censuses taken that year. Here we go. One free and one for the enslaved. So before I come back to the enslaved census, I would like to jump forward in time to 1920s when this aerial photograph of White House was taken. Here we can see the formal plantation landscape, agricultural fields, and navigable waterways that form the Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries. And if you look closer, you may catch a glimpse of some people on this landscape. We don't know who each of these people are, but perhaps some of my guests today are probably related to them, or if they're not, they know the people who are. And we could probably put our heads together and come up with a pretty short list of who these people are. But I show you these glimpses from real people in the past. The oldest are old enough to remember slavery themselves, and are certainly included on the second census. And the youngest are probably only 2 or 3 generations removed from it. Because I want to emphasize that American slavery affected real people and real families, and not just lines on a page. So the power of our work is to tell us something about these people, even if it's only where they lived. So returning back to the mid-19th century and the federal enslaved census, this document doesn't tell us all that much about the people who it lists. So we're told the name of the slaveholder, and then the age, sex, and race of the enslaved individual. Using the name of the slaveholder, we can do the same digital join as we did on the other census, and digitally embed all of these records into our historic map. So unfortunately, while we can't use this document to put the names of the enslaved back on the landscape, we are able to find where they physically are residing. And that's enough to paint a picture of slavery at the county on the eve of the Civil War and emancipation. So here in blue, we see a distribution of the enslaved individuals we were able to locate in our data sets. And together, these 2 censuses can help us paint a more detailed picture of historical demographics, not just in Talbot County, Maryland in 1860, but elsewhere and else when these types of documents exist. So in addition to generating the specific knowledge and working out the processes involved in creating it, this project also involves disseminating this information, this knowledge. So to this end, we've created a website, aia.umd/edu/locate, so I give you all permission to not pay attention to me for the rest of the presentation and play on our wonderful website. So here people will be able to read about what we did, see analysis of our new data set, and most importantly, use some of the GIS tools that we used to get inside of our data set themselves. So to that end, the centerpiece of this website is a WebGIS mapping application, a program that runs in your internet browser and enables you to pan and zoom, select, identify, turn on and off our map data. So we've tried to make it as intuitive and easy to use as other online mapping tools that people may be familiar with. However, because of the complexity of our data set behind the information and perhaps the freeness of the software that helped us host this, we may find there's a little bit of a learning curve that a tutorial we put together might be able to help. So an ongoing portion of our project that Kate's hard to work at is to finish digitizing the 1880 census to join to this 1877 atlas of the county in the same way that we did 1860. And we look forward to updating our website when this information becomes available next month or so. And we hope this slice in time, the second slice, will help us understand the transition between slavery and freedom. And with this product in hand, we'll also turn towards our FIA partner organizations to see what they might find useful or helpful. The National Archives and the Library of Congress both possess census records and the historic maps upon which this research depends and can be expanded. And hopefully the relevance of this work to the state of Maryland hasn't been overlooked. So even though I'm an archaeologist and I didn't show you a single slide with dirt or digging or artifacts, I want you to see how this project is still archaeological in a sense, at least metaphorically. So we excavate the archive and piece together clues about the past from the material culture recovered from the past. We tackle FIA priorities, including info equity, culture, collaboration, info transfer, and emergence through this work. So while I've just told you this is a project in mapping old censuses, at the same time, it's not a project just in mapping old censuses. It's more than that. It's about combining 2 very different data sets and producing something new. So I'm a PhD candidate researching plantation landscapes, and this is my application of this work. What I ask you today is, how would you use these tools and techniques? And I don't just mean which maps and censuses would you combine. I mean, which data sets do you want to combine to tell you something new? And as Frederick Douglass wrote in his autobiography, this is knowledge quite worth possessing. Thank you. the undergraduate students on the grant, and Kate, if you want to stand and wave, she's helping us finish digitizing. And I also would like to thank some of the guests we had to come out and visit us for this presentation. From the Frederick Douglass Honor Society, Mrs. Lowry, Mrs. Black, Richard Bishop, and Pat Rogan, and our department chair came out to visit us too, Dr. Shackle. Oh, and Ms. Beckley from Preservation Maryland. Ms. Beckley from Preservation Maryland. Questions?
You can invite Mark up.
Oh, if Dr. Leone wants to come up, our faculty mentor.
So, any questions?
Oh, I forgot, sorry. Clio and Marcelo are both undergraduates working with us. Marcelo is in Italy, enjoying herself, and Clio had class this morning.
Any questions in the back?
I might have missed this, but in the video, somebody was putting stuff in a plastic bag. What was that? How did that relate to the project?
So we have our archaeological project, Archaeology Annapolis, has our fingers in a bunch of different projects, I guess. And I think if I had to guess, that stuff came from the Women's Club, an excavation we did in downtown Easton. So it's in Talbot County. We sort of have this long-term research project in the area.
Can I follow that up and say, could you see in the future that you might be able to link images of the things you found on the site into the map or into the website?
Yeah, so this is actually Archaeology Annapolis' second foray into WebGIS and mapping. And the first project was put together by a graduate student combining site reports, documents, historic photographs, and maps of Annapolis. And it's available through our website, Preservation Search.
That's great. Questions? Yeah.
What do you hope young people take away from this? You know, not just on the Eastern Shore, but just nationally, in terms of national identity. How does this inform our national debate about who we are?
I think it very much helps bring the present into the past, using the tools of the 21st century to interact with these searchable data sets. So anybody, you grew up in Talbot County and your parents and your grandparents grew up on back to when our censuses are, you can type in your last name and it'll show you if we found a match to where they are on the map. It'll pull it up. Do you have anything to that?
The past and the present goes the other way too.
You better use it. Okay.
No, I was just saying, he had said the present into the past, but also the past into the present, which is maybe the other way that it goes.
Okay. Oh, Mark? Yes.
So if you take the entire slave-owning United States and all those counties modeled on what the team has done for Talbot County, one of the questions you can answer that can't be answered any other way is, what did freedom bring in terms of physical mobility? So you can see, or at least you can hypothesize, that before freedom, there was no freedom to move. That could be recorded. And after freedom, the dots are in different places. And that movement can be measured. Now take that for all the states in which there was no freedom, but in which freedom came. And suddenly, you can actually see the mobility of people that emancipation produced. And then we know that in a place like Maryland, that freedom was limited, probably until the 1950s, that the censuses are every 10 years. And after that, you can see much greater freedom. And you can probably even see the well-known mobility from the 20s to the 50s to today, from the south to the north. But it all has much greater precision. And within that, you actually not only enable many descendant communities to trace their own sense of mobility, but you can use the censuses as a way of justifying what the census actually does produce, which is a sense not just of representation in the House of Representatives, but of real representation beyond that, when that gets stopped.
Thank you very much.